Hello and welcome to another episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. Right off the top, make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel here, where you'll see these episodes every Wednesday afternoon, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, just as we sit here today for episode 3 of All Fired Up with myself, Brandon Ramsey. Also, make sure you find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Spotify, or wherever you do listen to your podcast episodes. You can get those every Monday and Friday morning. And then follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. That's where you'll find an all-encompassing view of all of my work, whether it be written, which you can find on KentuckySportsRadio.com, part of the On3 Sports Network. Certainly any tweets throughout the day about the national college basketball scene. You can find all of these YouTube shows. You can find all my podcast episodes there at BRamseyKSR on Twitter. Over here, I am currently watching North Carolina and Northern Iowa play. So we will be keeping an eye on that. But we are here today to discuss the Maui Invitational. Obviously, and if you listen to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Monday, we previewed Feast Week, everything you needed to know about the Maui Invitational, about the other great tournaments, Battleford, Atlantis, Empire Classic, all those good tournaments, the Bahamas Championships, all that good stuff. We talked about all that on Monday, but we really want to dive a little deeper into the Maui Invitational because we knew it was going to be great. It's lived up to the hype, and we have as good of a semifinal pairing as we could have had last night. We have as good of a championship and third place game today as we possibly could have imagined. Like this Maui Invitational has been, off the charts, excellent, and it deserves an all fired up episode with Brandon Ramsey, I suppose. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Last night we saw two relatively different games at the Maui Invitational. The first one was Purdue against Tennessee. Came out with Purdue winning 71-67. Admittedly, I was not able to watch the first half of this game live. However, I did go back and see some of it when I got home from my first high school basketball game of the season, and then watched the second half and everything, and took in a lot of content afterwards as well. As obviously, this was a game everybody was talking about nationally. And, I mean, there's games that are classified as rock fights. This one, maybe not as much of a rock fight in some ways, because like the scoring got up a little bit, but that's because it was so physical and there were so many fouls called. It wasn't like these teams were really scoring field goals. I know at a couple of different points during the game, you had like more combined turnovers and free throws shot or fouls than field goals. I mean, let's see what it ended up being. Like Purdue had 19 made field goals and 21 made free throws. Tennessee had 19 made field goals, 29 made free throws. That's what this game was like. I mean, 51 fouls, 78 free throws in a game that took, what was it, 2.5 hours, a solid 2.5 hours, maybe a little bit more. Like, it was just an absolute slugfest between two of the very best teams in the country, without a doubt, but two teams where it's not shocking that you would get a game like you got on Tuesday night at the Maui Invitational. I mean, I think if you would have asked what a game between Purdue and Tennessee would look like, it wouldn't have taken too long for somebody to hypothesize it would look something like what we saw last night, because these are physical teams that are maybe, at least at times, not the most skilled offensive groups. Now, I think both of them are better in that area this year than maybe years past. Like I think that Tennessee has gotten significantly more skilled, especially with Dalton Connect coming in to their rotation. I mean, he's been lights out this season. I think he is exceeding most people's expectations. And this was something, I don't think I've said it out loud yet. I was thinking about it the other night, actually, before what we saw on Tuesday evening, but I think it's fair to say that Hunter Dickinson is the most important transfer in college basketball. And, we'll talk more about Hunter Dickinson and his night against Marquette in a little bit. But is there a case to be made that Dalton Connect is the second most impactful transfer in all of college basketball? I think there's a real chance that that's the case. I mean, there's probably other transfers that mean more to their respective teams in terms of raising them from the level they were to the level plus said transfer. But when you're considering, Final Four contenders, national title contenders, top 10 teams in the country, for Dalton Knecht to come in and, in my opinion, be the Volunteers' best player when you're adding him on top of all SEC guards like Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi, like Dalton Knecht, what he does at his size on the perimeter, his ability to shoot it. He had 7 rebounds last night. Like for a guy that shoots it as well as he does, is as skilled as he is on the perimeter to also mix in his level of physicality. Like this is I think he's going to be a really good NBA player. I like Dalton Knecht a lot. I like what he brings to this Volunteers team. It obviously just didn't work out great last night. Even though Purdue gave them several chances down the stretch to go ahead and come back, because the Boilermakers end up shooting, which, I mean, this number is just insane. Purdue was 29 of 48 from the free throw line. So just a tick over 60%. They missed 19 free throws while still making 29 of them. Like, shooting 48 free throws in a game is absolutely insane. Tennessee committed 30 fouls. You had Jonas Adu, he fouled out. Tobey Akawa, he fouled out. Yes, Vescovi with 4, Meshack with 4, JP Australia off the bench with 3, a guy who normally wouldn't even play. I mean, he had 3 fouls in 8 minutes. You had guys that are just running in there to foul the crap out of Zach Edey for the most part. And, oddly enough, Zach Edey's a good free throw shooter. I mean, let's see what his Zach Edey, even after last night, is 73.7% from the foul line, which for a 7'4" guy is pretty darn good. He started the night 0 for 6 from the foul line, which was kind of an anomaly for him. But comes back 9 for 17, ho-hum, 23 points, 10 rebounds, despite battling foul trouble for Zach Edey last night. Just once again, one of the most dominant players that we've seen recently in college basketball. But the story of Tuesday night and this win for the Purdue Boilermakers was Fletcher Lawyer, sophomore guard from Homestead High School here in Indiana, up in the Fort Wayne area. 27 points and 6 rebounds last night. Thought he played one of his best games, probably the best game that he has played in a Boilermaker uniform this season. Last year as a freshman, it was a typical freshman guard in the Big Ten season, in my opinion. Well, that's actually not fair. He was very good for a freshman in the Big Ten, and we talked a lot about that last year, both him and Braden Smith. But Fletcher Lawyer comes in as, he's an excellent shooter. He did not shoot an excellent percentage last year. And even this season, it hasn't been excellent. Now, his volume's pretty high. He's shooting 5 threes a game, but he's quote-unquote only shooting 32%. Last night, he's only 3 for 10, so it didn't help his percentage there any. But he got to the foul line a lot. He was 10 for 11 from the foul line, 4 for 8 from 2. And I think that, obviously his shooting ability allows him to drive and attack closeouts a little more. But if he's going to become a guy that can get to the foul line like that, because he's obviously a great free throw shooter, if he's going to become a guy that can go finish at the basket some, that's going to open up some more playmaking ability for this Boilermakers team that needs a little bit of that. And I think that Fletcher Lawyer looked the part of an all Big Ten guard last night, when you already know that Braden Smith is going to be that level of player. Now, he didn't have his best game last night. Heck, he was 2 for 6 from the foul line. He was 2 for 9 from the field, turned it over 3 times. But I'm not worried about Braden Smith. There's probably still some questions of, is he good enough now? Like, we saw what Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer got you as freshmen. They were excellent for freshmen. They won you the Big Ten. Also, I think down the stretch of the season, there were some times where they got exploited a little bit as freshmen. Now, if you're a Boilermaker fan, as sophomores, you're hoping those guys are now good enough. Like, let's get to a Final Four. Let's try to win a national championship while we still have Zach Edey. I still don't know if they're that level of player. Like, I think Braden Smith is a borderline all Big Ten player that can win you the Big Ten. I don't know if he's a Final Four point guard. I think Fletcher Lawyer is starting to look the part of a guy that can help push you in that direction as well. I think adding Lance Jones to the picture, he's maybe their best on-ball defender out on the perimeter. He gives you a little bit extra punch offensively, but that was why this game was close. Like, to me, if you're a Purdue fan, you actually come away from this game with some encouragement, because you just beat a team as good as Tennessee is, and you got, what are we here? Braden Smith and Lance Jones combined for, let me do some math, 2 for 9, 1 for 4, 3. They were 3 for 13 from the field, 3 for 9 from the free throw line. and they had 3 assists to 7 turnovers. I don't think Purdue's going to beat many teams, especially top 10 caliber teams like Tennessee, when their two main playmakers, their two main ball handlers have that sort of a night. But when you have Fletcher Loyer step up and play like that, that's why you can win games. And I think that's why this Purdue team is so darn good and hard to beat, especially in the regular season, is because you know what you're going to get from Zach Edey. I think most nights you know what you're going to get now from Braden Smith. And then you have some guys, Lance Jones on a given night can get going. Fletcher Loyer certainly can get going on a given night. You have a little bit of depth there with Trey Kaufman-Wren, Caleb First, and Mason Gillis kind of rotating through there in the front court. And then Miles Colvin didn't play well last night, but he's going to be a guy that with his athleticism, his ability to shoot it, is going to have nights where he really impacts winning for this Purdue team. Now, on the flip side, talking about Tennessee, we mentioned Dalton Knecht and how good he was last night and how good he has been all season. Off the bench, Jordan Gainey was a key piece, especially down the stretch. He hit 2 big threes to give Tennessee a chance at the end. He was 3 for 10 from deep, had 15 points, but otherwise, it was just a slugfest. They couldn't get anything going. Santiago Vescovi was 0 for 3 from deep. All he did was shoot. He was 8 for 10 from the free throw line, but couldn't really get to the rack the way he does normally. Had no assists either. Zakai Ziegler in 28 minutes, he is 2 for 11 from the field, 3 assists, 3 turnovers. So, again, kind of similar to what I talked about with what you got out of Braden Smith and Lance Jones, and I don't think Purdue's going to win many games like that. Well, again, part of the reason they were able to win games is because Tennessee got, the same amount of nothing out of their 2 All-SEC guards, Ziegler and Vescovi. So it's going to be tough, and I think that Purdue has a little bit more other guys, especially when you throw Zach Edey in, it's kind of a game changer because Tennessee didn't have a clear answer for him. I love Adu. We talked about him a lot this year on this show and on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show, but he's only able to play 13 minutes because of foul trouble. So now you have to go to Awaka. Well, in his 13 minutes, he also fouls out. So we've only gotten 26 points. We already have fouled out 2 of our best 5 men. So now you have to go to JP Australia, and he's just not really ready to guard on that level. So I think you saw some chinks in the armor really from both of these teams, but their ability to compete with such a high level opponent while growing through some of those chinks, I think actually should leave both fan bases not feeling all that bad after last night, other than how ugly it would have been to watch that game. There was just never a stretch of more than, 3 possessions, 60 seconds, where you actually had basketball happening back and forth. It was, okay, we're going to play on this end. Maybe we're lucky enough to get to go to the other side, and now somebody's going to foul. Or we're going to the amount of fouls on rebounds. And, there's a lot of people, and like I said, I wasn't able to watch the first half live. I've seen most of this game now, but, there are pockets of it that I haven't seen fully on film. But a lot of people make a big deal like, oh, this is a ref show. This isn't what college basketball is about. I don't want to see 51 fouls. I don't want to see 78 free throws. Yeah, I don't either. And I'm a much of a college basketball sicko as there is. I'm going to watch it no matter what. But I also, I never like the argument of blaming the refs. I watched the darn game. People are just fouling the crap out of each other. So call the fouls. Hopefully, you then get them to stop fouling each other. In this game, it didn't happen. They were going to play physical, I guess, no matter what, until we all just ran out of players. But to me, that's all. It's not the refs' problem that they're fouling each other so much. It's not the refs' problem that when I go try to get a rebound, I'm just knocking guys over. It's not the refs' problem that people are climbing on Zach Edey's back. I have to call the fouls. I don't know what you want them to do. So I'm not buying into the ref show argument. It stinks there was 51 fouls and 78 free throws. That's Purdue and Tennessee's fault. That isn't anybody else's fault. Anyway, on to the Marquette-Kansas game. Especially early on, this kind of seemed like the exact opposite of what we just witnessed between Purdue and Tennessee. Started out pretty hot. There was some scoring early on. There was a couple of threes made. Kevin McCullough was playing really well for Kansas. You had Iguodaro getting some things done around the basket for Marquette. You had Cam Jones come out and make a shot. Joplin got a couple of things done. But then this one kind of turned. I mean, it was by no means the rock fight that we saw, but it certainly slowed down. I mean, heck, Kansas only ended up with 54 or 59 points. They shot 9 for 16 from the foul line. They only made 6 threes. Marquette was arguably even worse, especially from the perimeter. I mean, they were 6 of 25 from three, turned it over 12 times. Kansas turns it over 18 times. I didn't think either one of these teams played great, and certainly neither Purdue or Tennessee played great. So it's weird as high level as these semifinals were, as exciting as the games were. It wasn't high level basketball necessarily. Like Marquette did some really good things, spreading Kansas out and getting to the basket. Like I think that for as good as Kansas is guarding the perimeter, and Kentucky fans saw some of that in our game. Like DeJuan Harris, reigning Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, Kevin McCullough, one of the best perimeter defenders in all of college basketball. KJ Adams, one of the more switchable, athletic, physical defenders in all of college basketball. Elmarko Jackson is a plus defender, especially for a freshman for Kansas. But Marquette was able, and it's obviously, I mean, it's what they do. Like they have 5 guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot. They're going to spread you out. They're going to ball screen the crap out of you, and they're going to run as Tyler Kolek leads them. And he didn't play great. 3 of 9 from the field, only 4 assists. Also turned it over 4 times. But there's just enough weapons there. Like Cam Jones is a good player in that system. Obviously, Oso Ighodaro, he was unreal last night. Like he was the player of the game. He was the reason why they won. He outplayed Hunter Dickinson. He was able to bother him a little bit around the basket. Then ends up with 21 points and 9 rebounds. Certainly got under Hunter Dickinson's skin, which isn't necessarily the most difficult thing to do in the world. And I think that you saw a couple of the flaws of this Kansas team. I mean, I've watched a ton of Kansas because I watched their games leading up to the Champions Classic. Obviously, watched them multiple times play Kentucky, and part of the problem was, I mean, if Hunter Dickinson is going to play 33 minutes, you got to get him more than 8 shots around the basket. Like him going 4 for 8 from 2 is, in my opinion, that's on Kansas. That's on Coach Self. You got to scheme up some more opportunities. And Kevin McCullough continues to play, honestly, at an all-American level. I mean, heck, the dude turns in back-to-back triple doubles and then goes for 24 last night against Marquette. But you need to get Hunter Dickinson more opportunities inside. And then also, if you're a Kansas fan, I think you got to be a little disappointed at this point about what you're getting out of Nick Timberlake, the transfer from Towson. That this is a guy that comes in as one of the best shooters in all of college basketball. As a junior at Towson, he made 78 threes, 40% from the three-point line. As a senior last year, he made 92 three-pointers, 41.6% from the three-point range. So far this season, he is 4 for 12. He's not getting enough attempts, and he's certainly not necessarily making them. Last night, he plays 12 minutes. He's 1 for 3 from 3. Like, this is a guy that I think Jayhawks fans and certainly the rest of us around college basketball, I thought he was going to be the X factor, the game changer for this Kansas team to provide that shooting. I thought they had enough playmaking. I thought DeJuan Harris, obviously one of the best playmakers in the country at the point guard position. Then you have some unique playmakers. You can throw it to KJ Adams on the short roll or let him attack a closeout. He can play make a little bit. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson is arguably the best playmaking 5-man in the country. Though Trey Mitchell, he's coming for that title. Trey Mitchell's having an incredible year. 17 points or 17 assists, 2 turnovers at this point. He's the only. I wish I could give credit where credit's due. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit of a quick Kentucky tangent here. My show, my rules. Trey Mitchell is 8th in the country in assist to turnover ratio and the only big man in the top 25. Can't remember if that was Sean Smith that said that. It was somebody that I follow on Twitter. I apologize to whoever it may have been. Unless it was Sean Smith, then good job by me giving credit where credit is due. But anyway, Hunter Dickinson, arguably the best playmaking 5-man in college basketball. I thought that Nicholas Timberlake was going to be the recipient of a bunch of open looks for this Kansas team, and it has not happened yet. And I think that is a problem, especially last time when you get 0 points out of Elmarko Jackson. So essentially, like from that spot, that 5th starter, that kind of shooting guard type of role, Nick Timberlake finished with 5 points. You got nothing out of Elmarko Jackson. Like, you just got to have more production from that spot if you are Kansas. I think the last thing to talk about as it pertains to this game and kind of transitioning into the championship game, Marquette is way, way better defensively than what people give them credit for, myself included. Like, we talk about Marquette, we talk about Shaka Smart's offense. It's going to be high tempo. You have Tyler Kolek, who's probably going to be an All-American this year, running the show, arguably the best point guard in college basketball. You have Iguodaro, who can play make at the 5 for them a little bit. You have Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, David Joplin. All those guys are excellent in this system. Chase Ross, Sean Jones off the bench. Just run more guards in there. They're playing 4 guards at a time, pretty much at all times, and spreading you out. They can dribble, pass, and shoot at all times from all 5 spots on the floor. So we know what Marquette is offensively. I don't want to say they're equally as good defensively, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, right now they're 11th via KenPom in adjusted defensive efficiency. They're holding opponents to 44% from 2, despite not really having a ton of size, which is really impressive. That shows their athleticism and how they're kind of creating some old school Shaka Smart VCU chaos. Like, you're seeing a little bit of that with this Marquette team, and they're holding people down off defensively, and it's been impressive. And I think that is where we need to start when we're talking about this championship game tonight between Marquette and Purdue. We kind of, because this Boilermakers team is so similar to what we saw last year, a lot of the players are the same, and obviously the same is true for Marquette. It's more true for Marquette than almost anybody in college basketball. That these are 2 of the teams that we know the most about. We know pretty much exactly what they are, and that makes tonight's game really interesting because we know that a tried and true way of attacking Purdue is spread them out, make their guards play some one-on-one defense in the perimeter, put Zach Edey in ball screen situations, see what he can do on the defensive end of the floor when you bring him away from the basket a little bit. He's going to have to guard Iguodaro, in some, like, Iguodaro's not necessarily going to stretch the floor in the traditional sense of shooting threes, but he's going to do it as a passer, as a ball handler, as somebody who can drive it at him a little bit. And he's going to be pulled away from the basket at times because he's going to have to be involved in the ball screen defense to keep them from shooting it in from 3 a bunch. This is a Marquette team that shoots over 42% of their shots from 3-point range. Hasn't shot a high percentage yet, but it's coming at any given time because they have so many guys that can make them. And I think that Marquette is somewhat uniquely set up to attack this Purdue team and put them at least in the most vicarious defensive situations that you can put a team as good as Purdue in. Now, to flip it around a little bit, it's something we talk about a lot as Kentucky fans, like being smaller. Yes, we have some issues matching up with bigger teams, but teams have to match up with us positionally as well. Well, I think that's true for Purdue. Now, when you're throwing into there to Zach Edey, we saw it last time with Tennessee, 38 fouls, and they were just running through guy after guy after guy. I mean, you had 2 guys foul out in like 13 minutes apiece. So what's going to happen if Iguodaro gets in foul trouble early for Marquette, or really at any point for Marquette? Like, Ben Gould's your backup. He's a fine player. He's 6'11", at least has some size, but that's pretty much the end of the line. And there's a big difference between playing Iguodaro and playing Gould at the 5. Like, you lose a ton offensively there between those 2 guys, though you do get some extra floor spacing from Iguodaro, or from Gould, excuse me. But I worry about him guarding around the basket. And again, Tennessee fouled out 2 post defenders. Well, if Marquette fouls out 2 of their post defenders, we're plumb out of guys to play at the position. And I think that you, in theory, could see a game where Zach Edey wins it for the Boilermakers single-handedly. Do I think it's going to happen? I actually think Marquette wins this game again because I trust their offensive scheme against Purdue's defensive ability. And I just think that, like, if you remove all else, and you can't remove all else because nobody else on the court is like Zach Edey, and he's kind of the great equalizer. But if you tell me I have a chance to pick Tyler Kolek, Cam Jones, Sean Jones, Chase Ross, Stevie Mitchell on the perimeter, or Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Lance Jones, those guys, I like those dudes, but give me Tyler Kolek and that crew because I think they're just a little bit better out on the perimeter. So give me Marquette tonight. Make sure you follow me on Twitter for my gambling picks as well. 31-16 run right now. Last night was actually my first losing night in like 8 days. Still 4-3 on the week though after a 2-0 night on Monday. now 8-0 on Mondays. Something to keep an eye on. But no, 31-16. I put all my picks for free there on Twitter, usually every day between like 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on what time the games start. But I have Marquette plus 3.5 tonight. So go ahead and book that one in as your official, all fired up with Brandon Ramsey play for the Maui Invitational tonight. Don't love either side necessarily for that Kansas-Tennessee third place game, but certainly that's going to be a fun one to watch. I believe that game is at 2:30 Eastern time. And then 5 o'clock for the championship, Purdue and Marquette. Probably, does the winner of this game jump to number one? Probably a pretty good chance. I mean, they probably deserve it. Having whoever wins the Maui Invitational is, to me, the early season favorite and the best team in the country because of what they had to go through to just reach the finals. I mean, I was thinking that this will be my last point before we wrap up, hopefully around 30 minutes here. And this is a good little all fired up nugget, I guess. Obviously, nobody loves college basketball more than me. That makes me also love March Madness as much as anybody. Awesome event. Love the excitement of that first weekend and the upsets. Love it. I love when a 13 beats a 4. Love all that good stuff. Don't really love when 16 beats 1. I am a guy that I like to watch the best teams play for championships. It's why I am one of maybe the few left. Like I liked the BCS for college football. I like the 4-team playoff for college football. I don't need more teams. I don't need to watch Georgia and Alabama beat James Madison in basketball or football to then have them go finally play for the national championship. Like, let's just get there. Like I know who the best teams are. And I like that in college football, I feel like almost always the best team in college football wins the college football championship. Now, do I think UConn was one of the 10 best teams in college basketball last year? Yes. Do I think they were necessarily the best team in college basketball? I think their regular season proves that they probably weren't. Now, they're probably better than maybe what they had showed. They play excellent basketball. But like I don't, and this isn't about UConn. Like that's not the road I want to go down. But the road I am willing to go down is like I don't need to see a 4 seed, a 5 seed, and 2 9 seeds or whatever in my Final Four. I honestly don't want that. I'm not saying change it. I'm not saying go best 2 out of 3 so that Florida Atlantic doesn't make it. That's not what I want to do. I'm fine with the system. My point, to get to my point, what the Maui Invitational semifinals is likely going to be better and more exciting than what we see in the Final Four come the beginning of April. And again, I love March Madness. I don't want to necessarily change March Madness. I shouldn't even have said necessarily. I don't want to change March Madness. But I like what we saw last night with 4 of the 10 best teams in the country. Purdue, Tennessee, Marquette, Kansas, clearly 4 of the 10 best teams in the country. I hope that's our Final Four. Like I hope Kentucky's in it. But if I could sign a release today that said, I guarantee you that we have a rematch of the Maui Invitational semifinals as our Final Four, even as much of a Kentucky fan as I am, for the sake of college basketball, I'd probably sign that paper. Anyway, I think we're going to get a great championship game. And obviously it's the same 4 teams playing tonight in the third place in the finals. So it's like more greatness. And I'm all for it. Can't wait to watch. That is it for the 3rd episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. As I said, please leave it a like. Please subscribe to this channel. If you're watching later, please make sure that you start joining if you can, live 12:30 Eastern time every Wednesday. But I do appreciate all of you that are watching after the fact as well. If you have any questions or comments about the show, leave it a like here on the channel. And then just hit me up on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. Happy to answer any and all questions after the fact as well. Thank you all who have tuned in and watched this live today. And we will be back next Wednesday. But the next time we will talk will be on Friday morning on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show podcast feed. So subscribe to that as well. Follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. And thank you all so much for listening to All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey.